Chronicle 1, Hope and Decay. Chapter 1. The sounds of commendation and applause coalesced with church organs and trumpets inside an overcrowded monastery. Its small but elaborate stained glass windows shuttered, threatening to explode at the acoustic assault. Cheers rang out from every corner of the sanctuary as Canoness Merida Carthrax surveyed the assembly, smiling from a balcony over the Mass. Volume projectors equipped at each side sat quietly, seeming to rest from the words it had carried across the expansive room to stir the hearts of its occupants. Auriel, moved by the Canoness's speech, couldn't help but grin as their order's leader locked eyes with her before turning to depart the pulpit.
Hundreds of people, and she looks at me,
thought Auriel. Although there had been several speakers during this event, she felt most connected to Merida, despite never having met her face to face, as Auriel understood the loss of a role model and the sudden thrust of responsibility that came with succeeding your superior. Grateful to have heard Merida's words, Auriel mused to herself.
The commemoration of the God Queen. So many people who have paved the path for us. God Queen, give me the courage and conviction of those that came before me. Let me be the leader you need.
Organised to bolster followers of the Greater Human Alliance, this event invited orators and leaders to recount how the God Queen had moved amongst men and women through the years since her martyrdom. Alongside other Blessed Sisters, Defence Force soldiers, and various members of humanity, these tales rejuvenated Auriel.
"Sister Superior!"
shouted a woman approaching Auriel, trying to catch up to her in the sea of people. Auriel recognised the voice as one of her newly assigned warriors, snapping her focus back to her surroundings. She was surprised anyone noticed her stationed in the far corner of the main room.
Denise,
Auriel replied, turning to face the olive-toned, postured woman now at her side, amidst the groups trying to leave the sanctuary. In one fluid motion, Denise balled both hands into fists and sent one below her stomach while the other shot behind her lower back, then bowed. Auriel felt odd in her battle plate whilst addressing her subordinate adorned in simple prayer robes. But she was posted to guard the crowd. Denise was not. Though she didn't wholly feel it, Auriel put on a strong and confident demeanour.
Tell me, what did you glean from this event?
It was illuminating.
Denise beamed, straightening back up and projecting her voice over the instrument still playing above them.
It's one thing to read about such events in memoirs and biographies, but to have first-hand accounts presented like this it's...
Denise scrambled to find the right word.
Sublime,
Auriel completed.
I know what you mean.
Denise grinned softly at the reassurance.
How can I assist you, sister?
Denise's face hardened.
I would like to confirm preparations for our departure tomorrow. The other sisters and I want to ensure no issues before leaving, especially since it will be my first formal operation.
She corrected herself. Out of the members of Auriel's squad, Denise was the only one that had not embarked upon a mission prior to being assigned to her.
I commend your willingness, but for today, my orders are for you all to enjoy your remaining time here. Tomorrow's operation should be a routine check with no chance for excitement. Besides, as I've been told, do not be anxious about tomorrow, for tomorrow will be anxious for itself.
Recounting the same advice her own deceased superior told her, Auriel felt a wave of sadness that she prayed did not show in her countenance. Denise's expression lightened again and she smiled. Performing the same bow, she responded,
Yes, Sister Superior.
Then she turned and followed the crowd as it poured out the hardy wooden doors. Auriel's eyes followed the exiting mass, but her focus was lost as vivid memories flashed over her vision.
Death is the price to pay for heeding the God Queen, for in martyrdom shall we be exalted in her name.
Thoughts rattled as the fresh experience of loss echoed in her mind.
But I wasn't ready for her to go.
Auriel felt the heat of emotion beneath the surface of her skin, spending every ounce of effort to maintain her composure and stature. She was glad to be on this security assignment, away from her new squad members, away from the conversational requirements it entailed. For now, she could be alone with her thoughts. As the last of the attendees left the hall, Auriel formed in line behind them, with one of the other warriors stationed opposite her. With her helmet equipped, recognition of this sister would have been nigh impossible to the untrained eye. Auriel, however, noticed the distinct armour markings and designer pistol that belonged to Sister Superior Viridia.
No small talk.
Auriel wished to herself, keeping a straight face.
No conversations. Not right now.
Ignorant to the thoughts of her comrade, Viridia asked with a static, crackled voice.
How does your new team stack up? It's been, 2 weeks since you took leadership of them?
Indeed it has,
Auriel replied, masking the annoyance she felt.
This upcoming detail will determine how they are.
She wanted it left at that, but knew from prior experience that Viridia had no tender bone in her body and would keep pressing. Regardless, she kept her eyes forward as they marched behind the crowd, ensuring their safe and proper exit from the monastery grounds into the hazy, domed canopy that held Eliloth's unlivable air at bay.
I imagine you're feeling a bit odd about it all. I'm sure this isn't how you imagined getting to superior status,
Viridia stated, disregarding social grace.
No, it's not,
Auriel replied with a hint of aggression. Nearing the end of the courtyard, Viridia turned to her.
You're not handling your emotions well, sister.
Though Auriel could expect it, Viridia's bluntness always took her off guard. Stepping closer, Viridia continued.
You need to figure out how to direct your feelings properly, or you'll end up with more death for you or your team, and not in a way that serves the God Queen. We who have bled shall be... What? We who have fallen shall be... What? Finish it.
She stood expectantly in front of Auriel, waiting for her to finish a martyr's prayer that most blessed sisters knew by heart.
Watch your tone, Viridia,
Auriel spat, matching her colleague's demeanour.
I know the prayers I'm meant to pray. I know the words I'm meant to think. I understand all of that. You think I want to feel this way? I blame myself for Natalea's death.
The words were hot escaping her lips. With a flash of memory, the former Sister Superior's gauntleted hand reached for Auriel as if trying to escape her mind. Natalea's broken helmet revealed an eye staring unyieldingly at her, before being covered with grotesque, infectious appendages that pulled her back into an unlit hallway. Viridia let her rifle hang on its strap from her shoulder, freeing her hands to unfasten her helmet. Pulling it off, she stared Auriel directly in the eyes. Though discomfited by her scar-riddled and battle-disfigured visage, Auriel bore her gaze back at Viridia, matching her challenge.
You are the one to blame.
Viridia's words sent a dagger into Auriel's chest, and she retreated slightly with a surprised huff.
You could have left Raum at any point, and you chose after the rest of your squad was dead.
It's not that simple,
Auriel bellowed. People towards the back of the crowd turned towards the outburst. Viridia remained unfazed. Quieting her voice and attempting to regain some composure, Auriel declared through gritted teeth.
I'm done with this. The crowds have exited the sanctuary, so my duty for the day is done. If you'll excuse me, I have a mission to prepare for.
Seething, Auriel began to leave.
I pray the God Queen returns your squad this time,
Viridia quipped. Pausing with the intrusive thought to give Viridia's physiognomy another scar, Auriel had to breathe hard and forcefully reject her mental vehemence. Resuming her stride, Auriel ruminated on the events that led her here.
God Queen, give me strength.
What passed as civil dawn on Eliloth came swiftly to Auriel, her analog notification device blaring loud enough to stir her from sleep. A deep, carmine-red glow seeped into her bare, confined quarters as one of the planet's suns, a red dwarf named Sphyxian, neared the horizon. With a sigh, she rose from her cot and flicked the switch on the device, silencing its incessant chirps. Routine set in and Auriel was sitting up, eyes closed in meditation.
God Queen, Martyr of Martyrs, Champion of Champions, meet us this day at every opportunity. Give us but a fraction of your heart and purity, that we may honour you and possess your spirit. Guide our blades and bullets against your foes, that we may sustain the freedom of your death.
She felt hollow at the end of her dialogue.
Truly, I just want you to take away this feeling,
Auriel reflected. As had been her practice for years, she consumed a sustenance bar with a nutrient-enriched beverage while reading from any number of archival records she had grown accustomed to borrowing from the Order of the Hallowed Blooms convent. Afterwards, she would cleanse herself for armour preparation, washing and drying, praying and sanctifying, polishing, all rudimentary drills learned as a novice. However, for the past 2 weeks, Auriel found herself adding a new step to her procedures, running her hand over each scratch and gouge that marred her otherwise pristine white plate. Her mental blockade cracking, dim flashbacks from 2 decades prior crept to Auriel's anterior consciousness. Derelict ruins now stood in the centre of her mind, surrounded by chokingly thick foliage. Childish giggles echoed amidst the broken hallways and rooms filled with rubble. Besides Auriel and Natalea, there had been no one else around for at least a mile.
Mum's going to freak if she knows we came here.
A young Auriel squealed with a mix of fear and excitement, dropping a fist-sized chunk of concrete down a set of basement stairs she dared not follow. Natalea defiantly puffed out her chest next to her, exclaiming dramatically,
Worry not, Ori. Big sisters are natural protectors.
With an uncoordinated movement, Natalea raised the rusty metal bar she had claimed upon their entry to the abandoned building. Violently, the thought turned into an adult Natalea in damaged, befouled battle armour being dragged away by animated cadavers. Auriel shuddered.
I wish I could have been your protector.
She pined as the 2 memories stitched over each other. She thumbed the largest mark on her chest piece one last time before proceeding to don it over her bodysuit. As Auriel fastened her greaves into place, a shimmering blue light mixed with the now vermilion-orange radiance of Sphyxian to cast an otherworldly luminous green through the window, signalling that Eliloth's second son, Atreus, was peeking over the horizon. Finishing her preparations, Auriel recited a typical prayer over her regimentals.
God Queen, bless these holy armaments, that I may be attuned to your belt of truth, breastplate of righteousness, greaves of readiness, shield of faith, helmet of redemption, and sword of power.
Clamping her hand onto the door release, she exited her quarters and made way down the hall.
I can do this,
Auriel asserted to herself.
I must do this.
Approaching the rendezvous point, Auriel could see she was the last member of her team to arrive at Goliathan, an expansive spacecraft hangar primarily run by the Human Defence Force of Eliloth. Her squad was in the middle of a jovial conversation, some joking and chuckling, and all clad in their white battle plate with their helmets clipped to their utility belts. The first to notice Auriel's arrival was Danise, dropping the conversation they were in to turn and perform the same ceremonial bow as the day before.
Sister Superior,
she announced. The 8 other sisters pivoted and copied Danise's action.
You all appear well prepared,
Auriel noticed.
I appreciate your timeliness. Are all the belongings stored in the vessel?
The team straightened and a fair, unblemished warrior named Julene spoke first, raven black hair skimming her shoulder pads during her response.
Yes, I rechecked the stowables with Officer Braille. He inspected the contents and signed the export paperwork. We have full sanction to proceed to Osric 5.
She extended a small packet towards Auriel with her right hand for review. Auriel took it, thanking her and recalling her first introduction to Julene 10 days prior, after Auriel's preferment ceremony. She had been wearing the white, long-sleeved robes of all off-duty Hallowed Bloom sisters. However, Auriel had noticed Julene's right hand was bright red and badly blistered.
It appears I am to be your new squad leader,
she explained to Julene, battling her internal emotions at the time whilst trying to avoid any obvious notice of the discoloured appendage.
I am Auriel Agathe,
She pumped her chest with a fist.
I am Julene Serrator,
The fresh comrade replied with the honorific bow.
I'm a transfer from the Order of Divine Celerity.
Ah, a scout. I look forward to your reports and details of your past missions.
You should have them coming from the script office already.
Flexing her damaged hand, she added,
And I can put your mind at ease. This injury will not hinder my capabilities.
Snapping back to present affairs, Auriel inquired.
How's the hand healing?
Julene looked appreciative at her superior's remembrance.
Slowly,
She intoned in her naturally lower voice.
but better every day.
Overseeing imports, exports and military operations, civilians were restricted from Goliathan, and safety enforcers patrolled key areas constantly. However, as members of the Blessed Sisters, Auriel's team received authorization to field a modest venturing vehicle for their voyage, stocked with a standard array of equipment, weapons and necessities.
Seems in order.
Auriel approved with a mask of authority.
Anyone have any questions before embarkation?
She scanned the faces of her teammates, noticing that one of them, a woman with warm, russet-brown skin and tight onyx curls, seemed distracted by something. A large scar crinkled with her expression, spanning from the brow of her left eye down across the bridge of her nose. Auriel recalled the member's name and motioned to her.
Charity, correct?
The woman focused on Auriel, resetting her guise before responding in a honeyed tone.
Yes, Superior?
Do you have a concern you need to voice?
Auriel queried.
I checked the communication logs for the monastery in Dunedin.
Charity acknowledged.
They ceased all transmissions last week. No reports to or from there since.
She seemed worried, her eyes giving away her emotion. Auriel remembered from their initial brief interaction that Charity spent her childhood years at an orphanage in Dunedin, a quaint farming city on Osric 5 at the outskirts of the human star cluster. During their chat, Auriel had asked what drew Charity to the God Queen's service. Her reply mentioned this specific monastery as her introduction to faith. Attempting to put Charity's mind at ease, Auriel stated,
We shall find out what's happened soon enough. Records show that their communication systems were outdated. I'm sure the machine simply gave out. Other trade routes on the planet are active without signs of issue, so there's no reason to assume anything undesirable. Hopefully the new equipment and financial aid we're bringing can re-spur the church's growth.
Turning to Denise, she added,
Denise, do you know why we were tasked with this mission?
Shifting her weight, Denise responded uncertainly.
Because their signal went dark.
Another sister chimed in confidently.
Every 5 years, Blessed Sisters are meant to review conditions at monasteries they have received recruits or donations from.
A deep-set mechanical eye whirred in her round, golden beige face, fixating on Auriel.
Correct, Eleanor.
Auriel concurred.
This is a simple checkup, so we should complete it in short order.
She began towards the ramp to board their vessel, an unassuming craft named Exeter, with minimal defence capabilities and a max transportation capacity of 12.
Namika.
Auriel gestured towards another one of the sisters.
I was informed you were a navigator for your last squad. Care to lead?
Namika nodded, her hairless head glistening from the bright lights inside the hangar. A metallic voice box equipped where her mouth would be crackled as she replied in a monotonous, robotic voice.
Yes, Superior.
She turned and marched ahead of Auriel, followed by the rest of the team. Inside the ship, Namika headed straight towards the cockpit for takeoff preparations, while the rest of the warriors gathered around a central holograph table in view of the pilot's seat. Auriel pulled up a 3D interstellar navigation map that showed the various gravlanes, wormholes and jump gates between the 2 points. Highlighting a route with her finger that displayed on the center table as well as a pilot monitor in the cockpit, Auriel began.
If we follow Gravlane X 4K past Deserter to G65R, we'll be able to avoid known marauder points and take the Alliance jump gate in that region to the Gliese system. From there, Osric 5 is 2 planets in due to their current solar cycle. Travel time estimated at 16 hours, 37 minutes.
Roger.
Confirmed Namika through her modulator, flicking switches while checking gauges to confirm the ship's operability.
Everyone, get comfy.
Auriel completed, deactivating the stellar map.
Dismissed.
She started to move towards a side room, hoping for a break from her social demands when Charity blurted after her.
Sister Superior, are we meant to pray for our journey?
Charity's puzzled expression, along with several of the other sisters' almost hurt looks, reminded Auriel that she was now in a position of authority, and she had people looking up to her the same way Canoness Merida had looked up to Dahlia, the same way she had looked up to Natalea. Auriel had to learn how to be a strong leader for them, which meant dying to herself and cutting out the bitter remnants of self-loathing she felt every day since her kin sister's death. She had to be an example for them, for their order, for the greater human alliance, for the God Queen.
God Queen,
Auriel inflected.
I need your aid and direction. Yes, Charity. Thank you.
Her response felt genuine, truly grateful for the reminder.
God Queen, Martyr of Humanity, I humbly ask for your divine protection, guidance and favour during this voyage. Watch over this vessel and those within it. Surround us with your essence and shield us from harm.
The tension eased and Auriel continued to the equipment hold, bluffing a material inspection. When the door closed, Auriel gripped a shelf ledge to aid in fighting back tears as a wave of emotion and guilt sought to overtake her. Closing her eyes, Auriel breathed slowly and intentionally to calm herself, but the flashbacks broke through her guard. Natalea came to the forefront of her mind, and like a visiograph, one of their conversations prior to the last mission replayed in her head.
No matter what happens, Ori,
Natalea stated when they were alone,
you need to get off this world.
They had been tasked with exterminating a cult of the Havoc Gods on a previously unknown planet, a mission they had undergone several times before without incident. Taken off guard by the comment, Auriel had questioned,
What do you mean? Do you have further intel on what we're expecting here?
It's not that,
Natalea replied, staring out of an observation window on the large transportation craft they were in.
It's a feeling.
She turned to Auriel with a grave expression painted on her face, stating,
I need your word that you'll do whatever it takes to get off Raum.
She gazed unyieldingly at Auriel. Bemused, Auriel was silent for a long moment.
We're all going to make it off,
she declared finally.
That's not what I asked of you,
Natalea challenged.
You must make it off. The rest of us do not matter in this, promise me.
She extended a hand, palm down, waiting for Auriel to make the next move. Recognizing the gesture in an instant, Auriel grew more concerned, but knew better than to incite conflict with her older sister, much less her acting superior. Reluctantly, she placed one palm on top of Natalea's, then her other hand balled into a fist atop the stack. Natalea in turn placed her opposite fist underneath, completing an oath they had enacted since their youth. Returning to her current surroundings amidst the Exeter, Auriel realized how tight she had been holding the shelf. Undoing her grip, she stared at the crumpled metal evidence of her diminishing self-control.
Get it together,
she repeated to herself.
For their sake.
The journey to Osric 5 was blissfully uneventful. After a 1-hour mental hiatus, Auriel was able to relax and converse with her squad, gleaning information from her teammates that made her feel like she was getting to know them better. Denise was fresh from training, eager to prove herself during this operation. She verified information learned in the convent, reviewed proper procedures, and entertained hypotheticals with the group, relishing in their experiences. As a scout for the Order of Divine Celerity, Julene had been able to provide valuable reconnaissance for her previous unit. On their latest mission, she had attempted to spy on an orc clan that had a proclivity for flame weapons, but was discovered by a roaming patrol. She narrowly escaped, but suffered burns along the right side of her body. Charity shared stories about her adolescence at the orphanage on Osric 5, describing how they would attend services at the monastery in Dunedin. One year, a group of blessed sisters had arrived looking for potential recruits, and 6 children, including her, were chosen. Eleanor described the enemy encounter that took her eye, a harrowing fight against followers of the founder. She had been able to dispatch a dozen enemies even after her eye had been struck by explosive shrapnel. Namika detailed the toxic assault that greeted her last squad set by citizens that distrusted the Blessed Sisters. The noxious chemicals disintegrated her hair, wounded her eyes and throat, and irreparably damaged her vocal cords. Psydoc medical professionals were able to give her vision back with an eye transplant, but she was relegated to a modulator box for vocal discourse indefinitely. While most sisters are recruited young, Lucia, a middle-aged warrior with ebony skin and serene disposition, explained how she had enlisted into the sisterhood after her fiancé was murdered by a nomadic cult. She elucidated that through her grief, the God Queen brought clarity to her purpose, to serve and fight. Ironically, the last 3 members of Auriel's team, Clyra, Gwendolyn and Isidore, had been members of Sister Superior Viridia's squad for several years prior. After several questionable enforcements of martial law by Viridia against compliant colonies, the 3 of them submitted reassignment requests, ending up in Auriel's entourage. Finally arriving at the Gleaser system and moving towards Osric 5 at faster-than-light travel, Auriel checked the communication networks on the planet again, finding that the earlier nearby trade networks were still in operation, but Durnadin's monastery was still without an open comm line. She turned to each warrior and ordered,
Namika, we have to drop at the Suterwall hangar for a customs check. Eleanor and Lucia, get with the dockmaster upon arrival to secure a spot for the Exeter. The 3 of you will stay with the ship. Charity, acquire a local transportation vehicle to take us in. Julene, show Denise cargo disembarkation protocol and prepare our shipment for movement. Clyra, Gwen, Isidore, the 3 of you gather the weapons. Nothing high caliber, we don't want to alarm anyone. Everyone, ensure your locator beacons are active.
Addressing Namika, Auriel continued,
We'll relay our return ETA once communications are restored so you can get the vessel ready to depart. Anyone have any questions?
The squad of white-plated sisters replied in unison,
No, Superior.
Then proceeded to prep for their assigned duties. To Auriel, the Suterwall hangar seemed barren for a customs point. It could have easily held 2,000 people, and she had seen smaller spaces confined with as much. Yet there were only a few hundred present, mainly workers dispersed and focused on various menial tasks. There were only a handful of other visitors silently checking in and following the designated routes for their specific goods. As her subordinates located the dockmaster and transportation kiosk, Auriel started to approach a sluggish sanitation worker that was in the middle of mopping a green pile of something. They were clad in a large blue trench coat wearing a hazmat mask, and as Auriel got closer, she understood why. A harsh wave of reeking matter assaulted her nostrils. She stopped in her tracks, dislodged her helm from her belt, and equipped it hurriedly. Just as she took another step to investigate, a burly man with an off-putting wide grin sidestepped in front of her.
Oh, welcome, welcome,
he chimed with a grisly, deep voice.
You wouldn't be wanting to go further there. Some sickness been spreading about. The helmet's definitely a proper idea.
Auriel stared at him through the coloured visor of her headpiece.
Is that why civilian presence here is so slim? Do the Psydocs of this planet have a handle on it?
She felt uneasy from the stench, but this man's presence unsettled her more.
We are working through it,
he answered with a wet chuckle.
Please, do not concern yourself with our blight. Proceed with your arrangements.
He motioned towards the other sisters, remaining planted in front of the suited warrior. Lacking medicinal training, Auriel chose to table the situation and return to her ship with the rest of her team. It also gave her an excuse to leave the presence of the eerie, smiling figure.
Helmets on,
she commanded the squad.
There appears to be a medical situation happening here. Let's complete our task at the monastery. Then we can reconvene on this. Are we ready to go?
Along with the other sisters, Julene and Danis attached their helmets, flanking either side of a hovering cargo box.
Shipment is ready to move,
Julene stated. Clara handed Auriel a heavy assault rifle that was calibrated and weighted to Auriel's specific requirements.
Weapons are prepped,
she declared. Auriel's eyes were immediately drawn to Gwen, who had armed herself with a substantial flame weapon.
What do you expect us to walk into wielding that?
She inquired.
You never know.
Gwen replied with a playful half-smile.
I may find something to roast for the fun of it.
She's a pyromaniac,
Isidore concurred to the superior.
Let's pray we don't need to use any of these,
Auriel wished aloud. Having followed her blood sister for almost a decade, she felt the responsibility of leadership starting to settle in, focusing on the role model her kin set forth. And like Natalea, she wanted to avoid lethal confrontations at all costs. After confirming open communication lines between the squad and verifying all armor systems were in working order, the 7 appointed warriors set out towards their target. The hour-long journey to the monastery in Durnedin was quiet, their open-side transport providing the only sound as wind rushed around them and its engine hummed with a dull, oscillating tone as it kept itself airborne. They had travelled past any sign of the ghost-like entry city halfway through the journey and had since been streaking by common trees and brush that sprouted on a multitude of planets within the human sector. The planet's only sun, a yellow star that was bright enough to activate the transitional property of Auriel's visor, slowly fell as they followed a winding, rust-red pathway, signalling it was well past midday. Drawing closer to the cathedral at the centre of the campus made the tension amongst the sisters ramp up palpably. What should have been beautifully kept grounds with a grand central church and supporting infrastructure instead looked like a crumbling set of overgrown ruins. Chunks of concrete and masonry had collapsed from key points, and unnatural signs of dilapidation showed up on all of the structures. They disembarked the vehicle and advanced to the dismal setting before them, with the native fauna producing the only noise in the area. Auriel's memory of her and Natalea inside the broken building re-established its foothold in her mind. The vision of her big sister wielding the metal rod amidst rubble once again playing in her thoughts.
I can't believe this,
Charity conveyed over the comm line as she inspected the wall of the nearest building.
It's as if no one's been here for decades.
The shock in her voice was clear.
Wasn't the latest communication just last week?
Auriel inquired as all of the women began splitting up.
How is that?
Hostile.
Isidore interrupted, several rifle rounds echoing through the air before Auriel could turn to see who or what was being shot at. A sickening wet squelch sounded as the bullets found a home.
What are those things?
Gwen shouted, flamer held at the ready. Auriel momentarily seized with terror at the sight before her. The same undead creatures she had encountered 2 weeks prior were now shambling back into view. Natalea's horror-filled stare tried to imprint itself on her vision, but Auriel fought it hard. She regained her composure and barked,
Sisters, prep your weapons. Destroy these abominations. Do as the God Queen did and don't let up.
Superior?
Danise addressed with a shakiness in her tone.
Are those battle brothers?
She pointed towards 2 hulking masses coming around the side of one of the derelict buildings. Auriel could hardly contain the dread she felt. Last time, it had only been the corpse walkers. Now, they would have true monstrosities to compete with.
God Queen, give us strength,
Auriel prayed. She repeated it aloud as a battle cry.
God Queen, give us strength.
Her heart started to fortify and her team followed her lead.
God Queen, give us strength,
they declared collectively, silencing their fears with the invocation. With their words still ringing, they marched forward, guns held tight, and began to open fire.